The total lack of progress against the fortress belt has triggered deep desperation within the Russian ranks. This culture of deception has left Vladimir Putin completely detached from reality. We're now getting more casualties than the Russians can replace. They're also hitting Russia exactly where it hurts, in the heart. As Putin demands more air defences to protect Moscow, and Russia suffers its worst fatalities in a single month, there are important updates from the front line. I'm Philip Ingram, and this is Battle Plans Exposed. A staggering 26,000 Russian soldiers were killed in June alone, marking the highest monthly death toll of the war so far. The tide is turning, and Vladimir Putin knows it. Momentum is shifting on the battlefield, with Ukraine securing key tactical gains across the front lines while keeping Russian troops under relentless pressure. Beyond the trenches, Kyiv is systematically choking Russian supply lines and triggering a severe domestic fuel crisis through a massive drone blitz on Russia's critical oil infrastructure. With multiple refineries hit and occupied Crimea effectively under siege, Ukraine is tightening its grip on key logistics hubs, dealing a devastating blow to Moscow's wartime economy. Before we analyse all of that, let's begin by looking at what's happening on the front lines. Dramatic new footage captures the moment two Ukrainian FP-5 Flamingo cruise missiles tear through the sky over Volgograd before slamming into the target, the Titan Borodki defence plant. The striking video underscores Ukraine's expanding capability to strike critical military infrastructure deep inside Russian territory with precision. But it's the audio that tells the real story. Listen closely and you can hear panicked Russian onlookers shouting "Flamingos" as the missiles roar overhead. A stark reaction that reveals two things. Ordinary citizens have now learned to recognise these specific Ukrainian weapons on sight, and they've come to deeply fear them. This striking new footage offers a rare glimpse into rapidly evolving future of Ukrainian battlefield technology. Spotted deployed in the countryside, this cutting-edge, remotely operated anti-drone air defence turret represents the next generation of automated warfare. As drone threats continue to dominate the conflict, systems like this machine gun turret showcase Ukraine's ongoing push towards automated defence. By taking the human operator completely out of the direct line of fire, it highlights a high-tech tactical shift designed to protect the skies while saving modern lives on the front line. And what it's doing is it's part of a layered air defence system. These machine guns are relatively low-level, small range. Then you will have cannons that can go out slightly further before you then get some of the missile defences. It's that layer that allows the Ukrainians to cost-effectively deal with the Russian threat. Shocking combat footage highlights a costly tactical blunder on the front line, where Russian commanders ordered infantrymen into the open simply to wave flags for propaganda. The high-risk stunt backfired completely, instantly exposing their hidden positions to watching eyes in the sky. Waiting, Ukrainian drone operators quickly capitalised on the mistake, tracking the exposed troops and launching a swift precision strike. The video underscores the grim reality of the battlefield, where an attempt at a manufactured propaganda victory turned into a fatal disaster due to a reckless command decision. And this highlights what we're seeing across the front line. The Russians are going forward, waving their flags, taking pictures, getting it geo-referenced and saying they've captured the territory. What usually happens is the Ukrainians deal with them, or if they're lucky, they pull back to Russian positions. It doesn't mean they've actually captured the territory, even though they'll claim it. This footage from Ukraine's unmanned systems forces highlights an aggressive expansion deep into occupied territory, where drone units are systematically dismantling Russia's air defence grid. In June alone, USF operators knocked out 31 air defence assets, bringing their total to nearly 200 integrated defence elements neutralised since the start of the year. Since the Specialised Force was formed in June 2025, it has crippled 276 major air defence targets, effectively blinding and deafening Russian frontline forces as Ukraine clears the skies for deeper operations. This is what is critical. It's what's called the suppression of enemy air defences, and the Ukrainians are putting a lot of effort with their drone forces into dealing with the enemy's radar, the bits that can see what's flying, and then the weapon systems, the bits that can interdict with what's flying. They've been doing this for quite some time, and the front line is becoming more exposed. It allows Ukrainian cruise missiles and drones to overfly the territory into their deep strikes into the rear and deep into Russia. It will also allow the Ukrainians to be able to start using their fixed-wing aircraft, their F-16s that they've got, in a much better way, closer to the front line and much more safely. Dramatic battlefield footage captures the moment Ukraine's 40th Marine Brigade targets concentrated enemy forces from above. The video shows Orion drone units loitering silently in the sky before dropping lethal payloads, triggering a series of massive explosions directly on the target. Military officials emphasize that the successful strike is the direct result of highly synchronized operator teamwork, sending a clear message that no dugout or shelter offers safety when these Marine drone units are hunting overhead. It also highlights how Ukraine continues to leverage persistent, low-cost aerial surveillance to deny the enemy a safe haven from the front line. We can also see a mixture of pictures in here, from thermal imaging pictures to visual pictures. And it's that use of multiple different sensors in a way that allows you to spot even camouflage positions and confirm that those are occupied before you then expend weapon systems and effort in destroying them. Now turning our focus to key developments in the north. Ukraine is rapidly reinforcing its northern defences following a stark warning from Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrskyi that Russia is actively preparing for a potential new offensive targeting the Chernihiv Oblast, and this is just northwest of Kyiv, following a route that they tried potentially at the first part of their invasion just over 4 years ago. Kyiv is heavily boosting intelligence, surveillance and fortifying border positions to ensure that any attempt by Russian forces to breach the northern frontier is met with immediate, overwhelming resistance. Adding a critical layer of geopolitical tension, Syrskyi revealed that the Russian High Command is also drawing up operational plans for potential offensive actions originating from Belarusian territory up in this region. This could represent a high-stakes gamble, a final roll of the dice by Moscow to force open a dangerous new northern front. The ultimate goal of such an operation would likely be a renewed aggressive push towards the capital of Kyiv to stretch Ukrainian forces as thin as they possibly can. Despite the new threats, Syrskyi noted that Ukrainian forces have successfully liberated over 670 square kilometres of occupied land since the start of this year. Whilst the Commander-in-Chief cautions that it is still too early to declare a definitive turning point in the war, the steady clawback of territory highlights a highly calculated success. Syrskyi attributes these tangible gains to a deliberate campaign focusing on thoroughly exhausting Russian forces, maximising enemy casualties and systematically disrupting Moscow's offensive blueprints. In a remarkable tactical shift, Ukrainian forces have ramped up their pressure to the point where they now execute roughly 45 to 50% of all daily offensive and assault actions along the line of contact, while Russian offensive activity has seen a noticeable decline. Syrskyi has added another update to that and turning around and saying that we shouldn't underestimate the strength of the Russian capability on the front lines in the east, but he is beginning to detect that the Russian troops are getting close to exhaustion. His focus is on dealing with medium range and longer range strikes, attacking the ability to reinforce those troops, their logistics, to get equipment to them, and to try and stop those troops from being moved around in the front line. So if they try to move, they will be destroyed. And he's beginning to recognise that that is having an effect, but has been very careful to say that it is too early to suggest that the Russians are weakening to a point where there's going to be any massive change in what's going on. Ukraine's formidable fortress belt, Lyman, Sloviansk, Krematorsk and Kostunica in the Donetsk Oblast is holding remarkably strongly, successfully blunting Russia's costly offensive and grinding the Kremlin's advance to a near total crawl. New battlefield data reveals that Russian forces have managed to advance an average of just 3.79 square kilometres per day throughout June. This represents a massive collapse in operational momentum compared to August of last year, when Russian forces were advancing more than 4 times faster. The stubborn Ukrainian defensive belt in the Donetsk Oblast is utterly shattering Moscow's strategic timelines, with Russian forces needing to capture over 5,300 square kilometres to seize the remainder of Donetsk. Military experts assess they're highly unlikely to meet their newly extended deadline of December the 31st, 2026. And this is about the fourth deadline that Vladimir Putin has put on his troops to capture Donetsk. On the ground, Russian troops have shown absolutely no ability to rapidly advance or restore fluid operational manoeuvre against Ukraine's heavily fortified positions. The total lack of progress against the fortress belt has triggered deep desperation within the Russian ranks. Facing relentless pressure to deliver results, commanders on the ground are turning to manufactured victories, ordering dangerous flag-raising stunts and submitting fraudulent reports up the chain of command. This culture of deception has left Vladimir Putin completely detached from reality, acting on highly inaccurate assessments of his military's actual capabilities. In recent public statements, Putin focused heavily on the fortress belt, falsely claiming his forces had cleared most of Lyman and were sitting just kilometres away from Sloviansk and Krematorsk. But independent intelligence paints a vastly different picture, confirming that Russian forces have only infiltrated a tiny 4% of Lyman and remain up to 3 times further away from key cities than Putin believes. Ultimately, Ukraine's defensive grip on key strongholds like Lyman, Sloviansk, Krematorsk is forcing the Kremlin to expend catastrophic amounts of manpower and resources for virtually no return. This is what is called trading space for time. The Ukrainians recognise that the Russians are fixated on towns. We have Bakhmut. Bakhmut took the Russians almost 2 years to capture. We have Pokrovsk, again, another 2 years. We've got the Russians attacking into Kostunica, attacking into Lyman. They're nowhere near capturing either of them, no matter what the reports are that are coming out. Never mind then Krematorsk and Sloviansk. UK Defence Intelligence last year assessed that at last year's rate of Russian advances, it would take the Russians another 4 years and 2 million casualties to get right across the uncaptured areas of the Donetsk Oblast. I think that was probably a little optimistic because the Russian advances have slowed down enormously. And whilst they're advancing tiny amounts up here, elsewhere in the front line, the Russians are losing territory. And the Ukrainians are using this time that they're creating by delaying the Russians to do 2 things. One, kill an awful lot more Russian soldiers, so it is causing a real headache. We're now getting more casualties than the Russians can replace. And the second thing is, as General Syrski, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian military, has said, is they're attacking the Russian logistic bases, the resupply routes. They're stopping concentrations of troops being able to move around so that those troops in the front line are becoming even more exhausted, and he's beginning to see that. A new flashpoint is emerging in the Donetsk Oblast, where the Russian forces are actively pulling troops from occupied Pokrovsk to prepare a fresh offensive towards the city of Dobruja. The latest battlefield maps reveal a grinding, aggressive push, with Russian units squeezing the suburbs of Kostunica from the south and the east while turning the city into continuous ruins. In just a 48-hour window, the Kremlin managed to expand its occupied footprint by nearly 5 square kilometres, pushing deeper into the neighbouring settlement of Rodiensk. The tactical stakes here are incredibly high. If Dobruja falls, it could significantly damage Ukraine's wider defensive network across the region. Russian forces are currently attempting a dangerous pincer movement, trying to reach the northern neck of Kostunica to completely sever the central and southern sections from vital Ukrainian supply routes. However, Kyiv is acutely aware of the creeping threat. Ukrainian personnel and specialist drone operators are heavily deployed throughout the sector, maintaining a razor-sharp watch to intercept Russian infiltration tactics and keep this vital defensive line from fracturing. And the reports that we're getting in Kostunica itself, the Russians say that they've captured all of it. It's quite clear they haven't. They're using this flag-waving, geolocating tactic fairly frequently. And assessments are ranging between 150 and 350 Russian troops in there, and they're effectively trying to capture building by building. It's going to take them weeks and many, many casualties to advance anything significantly in there, no matter what we're hearing from the front line. And now Crimea. A state of emergency has plunged occupied Crimea into absolute chaos as Ukraine's intensifying blockade triggers mass hysteria and forces panicked residents to flee the peninsula. For Kyiv, breaking Russia's grip on Crimea is the ultimate strategic prize. A calculated offensive that not only severs Moscow's vital southern logistical artery, and that's the link from the Kerch Bridge and the ferries that are there, but systematically dismantles Vladimir Putin's core propaganda narrative of imperial restoration. At the heart of this panic is a devastating 40-day endgame blitz by Ukrainian forces targeting critical Russian energy infrastructure, which has successfully choked off supply lines and sent fuel prices soaring. With civilian gasoline sales tightly restricted or completely halted, which seems to be the reality in Crimea, desperate residents have been forced into gridlocked traffic trying to escape the region, and they're trying to get out through Kerch and through the Kerch Bridge. Daily blackouts have paralysed the peninsula, triggering a staggering 79% collapse in Crimean resort bookings as the reality of the siege hits home. And we have to remember that Crimea is the place where all of the rich and influential from Moscow and St. Petersburg would traditionally come on holiday, and we're in the middle of holiday season. Many of them own properties in Crimea, and for them not to be able to come on holiday is something that Vladimir Putin was trying to keep away from them. They're beginning to realise the real impact of this war. Ukraine's mission is to systematically shatter the land bridge connecting Crimea to Russia, leaving the peninsula isolated and uniquely vulnerable. And the land bridge is not just through Kerch, but they're attacking the land bridge that goes through the north as well, and through the captured areas of Ukraine up into Russia. Russian anxieties are boiling over regarding the imminent destruction of their ultimate political or geopolitical trophy, the Kerch Bridge. The unveiling of Ukraine's new Sea Trident heavy underwater drone has sent shockwaves through Russian military command. Packing a massive 1-ton explosive payload, this deep-diving vessel is engineered to glide past surface defences at depths of 60 metres to directly shatter the bridge's underwater support pillars. This underwater threat is the final piece of an intricate, multi-layered kill chain that has already systematically blinded Russian defences by wiping out local S-400 missile systems, early warning radars, and anti-submarine aircraft. Trapped in a collapsing fortress with lines being cut from above and below, Russian military analysts are sounding the alarm, openly admitting that a massive catastrophic strike on the Kerch Bridge is no longer a question of if, but when. And Ukraine, to remove Crimea from Russia, from its ability to influence what Russia is doing in the rest of occupied Ukraine, all it needs to do is isolate it. It doesn't need to put D-Day type landings across the beaches, and it's isolating it very effectively indeed. But the attacks in Crimea are also psychological. We've got, as I mentioned, the rich and the influential and their dachas and their apartments and this as a holiday destination. But Vladimir Putin had his honeymoon in Crimea, and to him, Crimea is something that is psychologically very important indeed. And of course, he personally opened the Kerch Bridge, driving a truck across it as the first vehicle to cross it. And therefore, to him, that's his pet project. What the Ukrainians are doing by denying this logistic base, this airfield, and this set of seaports to Russian military activity, they're also hitting Russia exactly where it hurts, in the heart. And that is something the Russians don't like. So that's all we have for today's Battle Plans Exposed. Remember, if you like what you've seen, please share it with your friends. Hit the like button. And if you've got any comments, please put them in the comments below. But thank you for watching. Till next time, I'm Philip Ingram. Goodbye.